I would have to say some of the worst wrecks I've ever seen have been at Daytona Beach and also Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where the speeds are quite well over 200 miles an hour, and yet you'd say there's no way that the people could walk away, the drivers, and they walked away with nothing wrong with them. Well, you know, I would have to say probably the worst wreck that I really got hurt pretty bad was at Riverside, California. You know, I've been hurt at Indy, but nothing real serious in Michigan, you know, and then I've been burned at Milwaukee and things like that. I'd have to say Riverside, California, because they always told me before that you can never get hurt that bad in stock cars, but I'd have to say Riverside, California. I hope you folks enjoy this tape.
I mean, I'm feeling good. The car is like driving a baby carriage. You go down the corner, you turn the steering wheel, the car turns, you get back on the throttle, drive it down the next straightaway. It's just as easy as going down the road.
They don't know that you're sitting there, you know, halfway through the race and you got maybe half a lap lead and you're doing everything you can do to save everything and you still know something's going to go wrong. It's too good to be true today.
The amazing thing about it is, guys, all those cars behind can't see anything, but yet these cameras are able to look through all this smoke and see exactly what goes on.
I wish we had a camera.
Yeah, I do too. I wish we could see. Here comes Kowicki. He blows a right front tire, no control, straight into the wall.
The interesting thing about this is Richard Petty really doesn't take a hard lick until he gets hit by Brett Bodine, who had nowhere to go because of the smoke and blowing a tire.
They got 6 cars behind him right there, and the smoke is much more than it looks like through the camera.
You see, I'm the car that just went by Richard Petty and without hitting him, the white car, and I couldn't see anything. But yet the camera picks me out just as plain as day. I don't understand. We got to get us a periscope or something with a camera attached on top of it.
Up periscope.
Up periscope.
Hi, I'm Johnny Hayes. Joining me today is Phil Parsons, Detroit, Michigan, Harry Gant, Taylorsville, North Carolina, and Beanie Parsons, North Wilkesboro, North Carolina. We're going to give you a crash course in racing today. We're going to show you how wrecks happen, why they happen, and why they shouldn't happen. So buckle up, get ready to go for a ride. Okay, let's take a look at the second great wreck we've had. I remember this one very clearly. It happened 1983. It doesn't seem that long ago. The Winston 500, Talladega, Alabama. Phil Parsons, you're in the air.
I remember this one.
Had a good race going.
Yeah, I was running 6 right now. Darrell runs into me here.
Then you hit him again.
Well, I couldn't let him get away with it the first time.
You know, I kept looking at it, and I couldn't figure out if Darrell ran into you or you ran into Darrell. It looked like you came down a little bit to me.
Since he's not on this show, he ran into me.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Ricky Rudd. What a victim of circumstances he was. Ricky Rudd is in the white 3 car that spins into the back of Phil's car when they go down in turn 1.
Waltrip's car stays against the wall. There's a big pack of cars right here. This could have been worse than it really was.
Were you conscious the whole time?
Throughout the whole thing, sure was.
Great memories, huh?
Sure was, yeah.
I think the biggest worry is when you're turning over, you know when the next car is going to be doing 200 miles an hour, which side's he going to hit you on? That's what I think about when I'm sliding at Daytona, Talladega.
Wouldn't one of the fears you have or thing you always try to avoid is having another car hit you in the door, the driver's door?
That's the thing. You don't want anyone to hit you. You're trying to get off the racetrack. This year at Daytona, I crashed, and all I could think about was, please don't let the car stop in the middle of the racetrack. Get going straight, get down against the inside retaining wall.
Backwards, straight,
anywhere,
anything.
Please don't stop in the middle of the racetrack, because those other people just can't stop. And what happens is, boom, they run into you. If they run in the back of you, there's a possibility of a fire. If they run in the doors, you're almost stopped. They're running 100 miles an hour, and I tell you, that concussion of that car hitting you, it's more than the body can stand.
You don't have to be physically touched by the other car or by the roll cage. Just the blow itself is awesome.
Hit the car behind or front, just a slap of the body.
The worst part is on your head, because we're kind of in the car, tightly buckled into the car. Shoulder harnesses that come over our shoulder, lap belts, a strap that comes up between our legs. So we're in the car. The seat has braces on either side of it, but when that car hits us, the only thing that can move is our head.
And in Benny's case, he's got a big head.
And I got a big head.
One of the biggest in NASCAR.
I mean,
yes.
they're talking about a head weighing 16 pounds. I bet if you whack mine off, it'd weigh 100.
Well, does your body stretch? I've heard them say that your body stretches a lot, and even though you're tied in real tight, your body still stretches?
Something stretches. I don't know, Johnny, if it's the belts or the body.
Or the neck or
whatever.
something.
But in 1970, the first time I really hit a wall hard, I could not believe that it was possible to hit a wall that hard. But I did in Daytona. And I felt myself go up out of the seat, and I felt my head up in the roof of the automobile. My helmet was up laying on the roof of the automobile. Fortunately, I didn't go up and, bam, hit the roll bar that goes around the windshield. I just felt my head up in there, and I settled back in the seat. We're looking at crashes that happen at 200 miles an hour. 200 miles an hour, folks. That is no exaggeration. You watch these races on TV, you watch this film, and certainly the cars don't look like they're running 200. Are they, Harry?
They look like they're running slow motion on the film, but they're going 200 miles an hour.
At least.
At least 200, and it feels like 300 when something happens.
That's the question asked all the time is, what does it feel like to run 200 miles an hour? Well, it's not that big a deal until you get in trouble. Then it feels like 300 miles an hour.
Until somebody hits you.
Yeah, right.
Okay, let's take a look at the next one. This one happened at the Coca-Cola 600 in 1987, and Harry Gant is in the middle of this one, so we're going to let you explain to us what you...
He's on the inside.
He's on the inside, and I wanted you to explain how you started this wreck, Harry.
Okay. See, I'm coming under Bobby, a real clean pass. Lots of room.
The left
Absolutely no room.
And there he
Which way
goes.
should I turn the wheels? Should I try to go? No. Here we go.
I got to give you credit. That was good. That was
Yeah.
good, Harry. You had several times that you went right across the racetrack.
Let's look at that again and look at this very good, clean pass that he had all the room in the world on the
I'm
bottom.
like Ryan, Harry.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get him on by those cars so I can pass him. And he jumps down there and goes through Speedy Dry and fixing to go through the grass here. Squeezes Bobby up in a Rusty, turns him around.
I don't believe Rusty and Bobby ever touch. It
Right.
looks like that
Now get on
you
the grass.
created a vacuum there.
Now, Earnhardt drove through there, and he saved his car. Remember that?
Yeah. Well, see,
And Earnhardt never lost the lead.
Earnhardt never let
Oh,
off.
Harry, you look like, hey.
It's a different car, though, ain't it, Harry?
Right. I'm thinking about I better get off the racetrack while I'm ahead.
Really, they never touched it. I think it was when you get a lot of cars around each other, the air does funny things. The air going over the roofs of the car, and that's really what got Bobby in trouble was the air because of Harry and Rusty Wallace being on either side of him. He lost all the downforce in his car, and there is a turn in the middle of the front stretch at Charlotte, which is where this crash took place, and he was just didn't have enough downforce really to turn the car.
You get in the grass, the car is hard to handle. If we could maybe get Charlotte Motor Speedway to pave it all the way to the pits, it'd be much easier.
What they ought to do? They ought to make it concrete and paint it green.
Right.
Everybody's talking about their yard always
Yeah.
making their yard cement and painting it green so they wouldn't have to mow the grass. That's what Humpy ought to do, is make all that cement and then paint it
Right.
and put a Charlotte logo in there
On the concrete.
and put their sponsors.
Yeah.
Same deal, and that way when we got down in there, be a whole...
We keep going.
Well, the problem is we'd race down there.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I just happened to dawn on me.
You give us 2 more feet and we're going to use it.
Oh, that's right. It wouldn't be the grass. We'd be down next to pit road racing.
Let me ask you a serious question.
You never asked a serious
No,
question.
this is a serious question. How would Bobby Allison felt there? Did he think somebody hit him? If you were Bobby Allison in the middle of that deal, was anybody guilty? That's one of those just racing calls. What would you have called that, Benny?
It just had to be just a racing accident because Bobby, it looked like, was trying to pass Rusty or whatever. Rusty was trying to pass him. I don't know which. And Harry saw an opening because Bobby was trying to get Rusty up as high as he could. See, Bobby's trying to get Rusty up as high as he can because when we get to turn 1, Bobby needs to be as high as he can to get a good angle on him going in turn one. Harry saw an opening. He jumped in there. And all of a sudden, like Phil said, Bobby Allison has no downforce on his car.
The next shot, 1988 Firecracker 400. Benny Parsons did a great job here. Let's watch BP.
Oh, this is this year. This is 1988.
Yes.
Ooh, see, that's the one I was talking about a while ago. See, I'm steering the car. I'm out of control, but I'm still trying to get that baby as far away from the racetrack as I possibly can. Because, folks, look at all those cars going by. They're nowhere close to me, and that's where I want them to be. Nowhere close to me.
Here it is in slow motion. Alan Kowicki blew an engine to start this as he, coming down off the bank, got into Cale. Now, Benny, you got by Kowicki here.
Barely missed it.
Boy, what a job.
But then Cale was right up in front of you. Again, like we talk like the smoke, there obviously you couldn't see a thing. You couldn't even see Cale.
Then as the debris flies, other cars come through, they get out of control, blowing the tires out. That's when you never know where people are going when you're...
Now, how important is a spotter? You know, a lot of race fans don't realize that you have spotters that stand on top of trucks and try to tell you when those wrecks are there, go high, go low. How important is a spotter to you in racing now?
In that situation there's nothing the spotter could have done because I was in the wreck before he even realized there was a wreck. But now, had I been going into turn 3, the spotter could have saved me. He said, big crash. His very words would have been, big crash, turn 4, slow down. And you would have taken him at his word and backed off the gas, signaled to the guys behind you, hey, I'm stopping this thing. And you should have been going slow enough when you got to turn 4 to drive through any debris or cars that sit in there.
I think they ought to have a special booth built real high for all the spotters all the racetrack.
That's a good idea. That really is a good idea. And it's something that we should try to approach NASCAR about, is because the spotters are invaluable.
Right.
To, you know, that was a 5 or 6 car accident. But 10 years ago, that could have easily been a 12 car accident. And the problem is those last 6 cars are going at a higher rate of speed, and as we talked about, those first 6 cars are stopped.
Right.
And here comes 6 more plowing into them at a high rate of speed. Now the spotters tell them to slow down, and if they do get in the crash, it's at a very slow speed.
Right.
Our next major crash happened in 1985 at the Goodies 500. Let's take a look at it.
Harry, you caused this again, didn't you?
Yeah, I braked everybody.
Brake check. Daryl there.
Kyle has nowhere to go. Bill has nowhere to go.
Wow, what a
I
wreck.
made it through. That was me in a
Right.
17 car.
Yeah, when you're starting that far back in the leader's crash, you usually work your way through. Plus, I think you had a good spotter that race.
Yeah.
Did Kyle hit him in what did you do? You brake check on the restart so you can get a big blast away?
Right.
And that puts them slowing down and Kyle was accelerating. And thank you, Harry, again.
I don't know what
making.
you have to ask all those people going around, 'cause I'm looking in the mirror down the bike stretch and I've got it made. Yeah, nobody's behind me.
The problem is at Martinsville, the turns are concrete. The bottom 2 grooves of the racetrack are concrete. So after a restart, like this was a restart, this was the first lap after a restart, the tires never hook up the first corner, maybe the first 2 corners. So Harry, it looked to me like Harry was just being cautious, trying to get in the corner, stay on the bottom, and not slide up and let somebody get underneath him. As he slowed, Darrell Waltrip, who was in the 11 car, slowed, and when he did, Kyle Petty had the momentum up, and he just ran and nudged Waltrip, turned him around. That's what started the 15 car crash.
Do you agree with that, Benny?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Old Harry was going to save that inside groove, and the problem was that it's okay for 2 or 3 cars. That first car right behind you, he can adjust to you're slowing down. The third guy might even, in this case, the third guy was Kyle Petty. He could not adjust to the fact that they were slowing down more than normal. Plus, Kyle looked like he was trying to beat the 15 into the corner so he could get on the inside. He didn't want the 15 car to get the inside position on him, so he tried to beat the 15 in there, and boom, there was the 11 car. Whoops, no place to go.
And then sometimes the brakes go down under the caution too, and you don't have them instantly.
What does that mean, the brakes go down?
Well, they get hot while you're running, the caution comes out, and you come in the pit real quick, change the tires, go back out.
You're only running 30 miles an hour versus 100 or 120.
And you're sitting there, you know, and you start to pump it back, giving 1 lap to go, and you figure, well, I got to pump my brake. Normally we pump them up anyway, but sometimes you're taking a drink of water, talking on the radio, and it don't pump up that quick. and you run down the corner and you got an air pocket in there for a second, and you just don't have brakes for about 2 turns.
Or you can forget not to pump them up.
Right.
And I tell you, you talk about your heart going up. People ask you, do you get scared in a race car? You know, you're not scared to climb in the race car. But when you go down in turn 3 at Martinsville, turn 1, or North Wilkesboro, or Rockingham, and go to hit the brakes with your left foot or your right foot, and there's nothing there, you better
kind of stand up in the seat.
you better believe we get scared.
Do you close your eyes then and hold on, or do you just watch it come?
When you get ready to hit something, you close your eyes.
It's just before closing your eyes time.
Okay, the next one, 1987 Wrangler 400. This is another good one, Kyle Petty.
Yeah,
this is the old Richmond track. Fortunately, we won't be going back there.
Ooh.
The whole, that's my
There
car
you
backwards.
are,
I'm looking straight into somebody. Was that you, Benny, driving?
Yeah,
the
then
green
35
car?
in the green
Right.
car.
Harry,
right in the
back
middle.
it across the start-finish line. I'm the spotter. Don't lose a lap.
That's me creeping along the outside. They're picking up spots every inch
Way
of the
to
way.
go. Oh,
You
yeah,
see the
pick
lead
up
cars
10
coming
spots.
in, go down pit road and lap.
Trying to lap.
Some of the
All these
cars.
cars sitting here
Yeah.
are now lap.
The worst part about it is that I didn't hit anything
No.
hard in that deal, but I hit Bobby just hard enough I sheared all 4 hood pins
In that wreck.
in that wreck. So when I took off, I went down the first corner, boom, the hood flies up in my face.
Okay, as we're going here, you see Kyle Petty is jumped under, and it looks like Neil just lost it a little bit. Did he, or spin around, or?
Well,
how
Kyle got into him a little bit and got him turned around, Terry Labonte. And,
Okay, now,
you got Harry there facing traffic.
Everybody stopped, though. I felt like I was in a safe spot. Everybody was stopping. It was early in the race. They didn't want to get the front end knocked off. And every car that came up there stopped rather than just try to beat you around and beat the caution car around to make up some time.
you could see the leader go down pit road and lap a few folks.
I tell you what, when, like in that situation, Harry was facing all that oncoming traffic. It was not too bad, right?
Right, at this particular.
But when you're in Daytona, Talladega,
This is the slowest track we run.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. You've backed it in the fence, and you look up, and here comes somebody running about 150 miles an hour, and you're stopped, and you know that they're trying to catch up
Right.
so they can go make a pit stop. It's one of the most terrifying moments in your life.
Got to be.
We started on the pole in Charlotte, and the engine blowed going in the first turn. And here's the first green flag, the first takeoff of the race, and I'm sliding backwards going in one, and here comes everybody, but nobody hit me. But that was awful feeling there, 'cause everybody was missing me left and right. And
Harry had to go up the track and then back
Down.
down without
Right.
anybody hitting him.
Okay, let's go back to that great place, Darlington, the Southern 500, 1987. Watch Davey Allison go for a ride. It's easy, the lady in black.
That's probably the most difficult turn in all of motorsports right there,
Right.
turn 4 at Darlington.
nowhere to go from
Oh,
there, Benny.
there I was. I just came in the shot, folks. I'm in the green car.
The hole closed up on you.
Well,
So everybody else gets stopped. Their spotters saying, whoa, whoa, Benny has wrecked.
well, this is a classic example, and Mike Potter admitted, the classic example in stock car racing, when you see an accident in front of you, you can't jump off the throttle. You have to come off the gas easy. Now, that's Mike Potter, and he admitted that he just jumped off the gas too quick. The car spun, and he comes up the racetrack. Lake speed hits him first, and he couldn't do me a break and knock him out of the way, right? No, he's got to knock him up back right in front of me. And I tell you what, folks, I hit that guy. I hit him hard, and I was hurting. But I was also concerned that I might have hurt Mike.
Yeah.
I bruised my hand and other unmentionable parts of my body. Whew, it was a bad day.
When you're in a situation like that, do you watch your rear? I mean, you're hitting wrecks, people in front of you, dodging things. Do you use a rear view mirror then, or you figure everybody else is on their own, what happened? Or do you always just look ahead? When there's a wreck, are you looking straight ahead, or do you look
First
back?
thing I do
for
is wave to make sure the guy behind me knows.
See, that's the thing. We don't have brake lights that you have on passenger cars. So the only way that we can communicate with the people behind us is through hand signals. And that is the signal, hey, I'm stopping this thing. We also, sometimes if you watch a race with an in-car camera and you see the driver do this, he's not waving to the guy behind him. He's telling the fella, I'm not going in the turn as hard as I normally would. like we saw Harry and Labonte go in turn 1 at Martinsville a few moments ago. You know, at a short racetrack, you wouldn't do that. But at Daytona, Talladega, Charlotte, a lot of times the driver in front of you will hold his hand up and say, I'm not going to go in the corner as hard as I normally would, to keep the guy from going and plowing the back of you.
Well, I've seen a lot of hand signals in a race car.
Well,
You
That's
know,
a different kind.
yeah. I knew there were signals that y'all
Those
made
are signals
between
we
each
make
other.
after wrecks like this.
Yeah, I've seen the
Those kind of
signals.
signals.
Yeah, the
That's
veins
the most
stuck out
important
on-
signal.
The
Watch it.
people, you're looking for that when you come up.
Yeah.
What about when someone wants to pass you? You know, do you tell them to go left or right if you're running and you're off the pace or something happens? How do you handle those situations?
Normally, you motion, they motion to me, or I motion to them. At a lot of racetracks, that's really a good question, because a lot of racetracks, the fastest way around the racetrack is called the groove, and that's on top of the racetrack. Or at Martinsville, the fastest way around the racetrack is on the bottom. So if my car is handling very well high, and the leader comes up to pass me, or a faster car comes up to pass me, I don't want to get out of the place that I feel comfortable. So I motion out the door, hey, pass me on the left.
Right.
Because normally the faster cars would go by on the outside. But if I'm in a situation that the car is really comfortable up high, I don't want to get out of there. I just motion to them, hey, go by on the inside.
Yeah. It's the signals, of course, some of the newer guys takes a little while to get adjusted, but now, with everybody running, I think everybody's starting to really use the hand signals a lot more, I think, than did when I first started racing.
One question I was thinking about earlier, it seems like leaders and top cars have very few wrecks when you're up front. We've seen a few here, but whatever. But as I watch the races now, if you're back in a certain pack, I watched recently, those 3 or 4 will check out and get in a line and gone, but the next 25 will race like crazy for a spot, and that seems to be where the accidents happen.
Well, you've got to realize, number one, that the people in the middle of the pack or the back of the pack are trying just as hard as the leaders to go fast. And their car may be ill-handled. They may be having more difficulty running the speed they are than the leader is running the speed he is. So chances are there'll be more accidents there because they're trying hard. And number one, there's more cars usually in that pack. So anytime you get when the number of cars increase, then the difficulty factor increases when you get all the cars around you.
You'll notice a lot of the wrecks we've had also have started on restarts. Is that the high possibility area that you're going to have trouble as a restart of a race?
You know, the older you get, you really don't want to see caution flags. Because and again, you mentioned a key point a while ago, there's 30 cars now running for the championship, and not only running for the championship, but 30 good running race cars. Race cars with sponsors, good sponsors that want their cars to do well. So in a restart, or the start of the race, you got 30 of those guys in there scratching and clawing.
Kamikazes.
Yeah, right. And you've been running for 100 laps on the green, and the cars are strung out, and boy, it's a pleasure. You're just driving around there, and you're passing the car every now and then, guys passing you every now and then. You really have a good time. Now all of a sudden, you got 2 in front of you, 2 right beside you, another guy behind you hitting you in the rear bumper. Man, what am I doing here?
Now we'll go to Charlotte Motor Speedway, where we had a real good incident. And watch this one closely.
I wouldn't call that good, Johnny.
No.
The one that I loved about this, Jeff Bodine, after the race was over, was furious at Lake Speed for crashing him. Went on TV, radio, was furious. I want you to watch back and see how Lake just blasted Jeff. So don't listen to these guys right after they get
Lake's
out
on
of
the
a car.
inside, Rick Wilson in the middle, and Jeff on the outside.
Let's see, we're talking about hand signal. Jeff gives a left-hand turn.
No signal.
The Foyt car didn't see it.
I tell you one thing, Jeff backed into that fence. Look at the rear of that car when it comes off that fence.
Oh man, there is no
Then you
rear.
see, like a lot of cars here get in trouble trying to beat some of these guys are trying to straighten their car back out. And knowing that the caution is probably going to come out here anyway, you're going to make a pit stop.
Whose fault do you call that crash? Or was there any fault? Was it just a racing accident?
Racing accident.
Well, I basically think it was a racing accident. because the 4-car thought he had position on Jeff. Jeff couldn't feel the 4-car, but couldn't see the 4-car,
Yeah.
because he was just at the blind spot. The 4-car was in the blind spot where Jeff couldn't look over his left shoulder and see him. He was not visible in the mirror.
Right.
So he didn't realize that the 4-car was there. He turned to go in the corner. Uh-oh, the 4-car is there.
Well, I noticed recently I was spotting for Phil Parsons, and Phil said to me, I cannot tell when I have him cleared. You tell me if I've got him cleared and I can pull up. Well, as soon as he said that, we picked up 5 spots just like that, and I wasn't smart enough to realize. I was thinking in my mind, why didn't he pull up? Well, he wouldn't pull up because he didn't know he had him cleared, and that's a perfect example of that.
I mean, once the car, just like in a street car, once the car gets to your right rear in a certain place, you can't see him. Now, a lot of times we can tell by sound, by feel, by the way the air changes. But there's a lot of times when you don't want to squeeze somebody out, because if you clip his front end, he's liable to turn you straight into the wall. So you really need to know, and a lot of times that's where the spotter comes in handy to tell you.
Richard Petty's got a mirror on his left side of his
Sure
car.
does.
And I think that's a smart idea. I like to have one on both sides.
Yeah, Richard has one of those little bubble mirrors that like trucks have, where he can see what's on the left side of his car. You know, as Phil mentioned, most of the time we can feel a car beside of you. Most of the time, Jeff could have felt the 4-car beside of him. But unfortunately, there was a car behind him, and the lake speed was on the bottom of the racetrack. So all those cars being there took all that feel away from Jeff. He just didn't realize the car was there.
Harry, a lot of times I'll hear you talking that you'll say, well, I knew he was going to wreck 5 laps before he did. Are there situations where you get into, you can just tell the fella's over his head, he's out of control, he's got a tire going, do you notice that very often?
Yeah.
Do you want to get by, or?
Well, like if you're chasing 2 cars, basically, when it usually starts like that, and one car's trying to pass sudden, you're sitting back here hoping that one car will go ahead and pass to give you leeway to come up and maybe take a open pass too. But he's worked him several laps and he's getting looser and starting to bump into him. And then you think, well, either you hope he's going to get on by, or should I back up just a little bit because it looks like they're going to go around here. So you got to think about all those things, and normally you back off a little bit, it clears him, and you can't catch up then.
Well, there are individuals, Benny. I saw the race recently at Watkins Glen, and Rusty Wallace was running second, and he was coming in behind, and the cars got together. When you get 2 individuals, if you get Dale Earnhardt, Rusty Wallace, Jeff Bodine, some people that have known to really get after it or whatever, do you anticipate that they're going to get together? There may be a possibility that something's going to happen before it happens?
Well, I think on the last lap at Watkins Glen,
Yeah, last lap.
what you saw at Watkins Glen, that had to happen. Because Ricky Rudd, who eventually won the race, his car was an inferior, at that point of the race, was inferior to Rusty's. Rusty had stopped and made a pit stop, gotten on some 4 tires, had come back through the pack. Ricky had not stopped. So he was out there with worn tires. Rusty had on better tires. So it was not a comparable situation. Rusty's car was much faster, but Ricky was in front. And he was determined to do what he had to do to stay in that position. In that situation, how are you going to stop a bumping procedure when the car behind you is 2 seconds faster than you are?
Right.
It's got to happen. Fortunately for both of them, the bump wasn't bad enough that they spun out. Because the guy running third, he said, man, I got this race won.
I was running 4th, and I was looking pretty good.
Yeah, right.
With Bill Elliott right in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. This was at Winn-Dixie 300 in Charlotte, North Carolina, 1985. Simple move going across the grass. Benny, why don't you pick this up?
Bosco Lowe spins coming off the corner, and he does a beautiful job saving the race car. The only problem is that he drives back on the racetrack too fast, and boom, right in front of traffic. He's doing 40 miles an hour. Here comes a car running 150, 60 miles an hour. The result is that Bosco is lucky he didn't get burned. Hey?
Right, he sure was. That's one of the things they tell you don't drive back onto the racetrack and till your car's completely under control. He was probably doing 100 miles an hour through that grass and thought he was in control.
This crash was very similar to the one Harry had that we looked at earlier, where Harry went through the grass. Harry turned the thing left, locked up the brakes, slid to a stop, refired the car, and went on. Now, Bosco decided to try to keep going, and he hit really, in the grass, he had the car under control.
Right.
But once he hit the asphalt, Right now, he's fighting to gain control. Now, right now he has control, but once he hits the asphalt, his wheels are spinning right now because he's trying to accelerate.
Accelerating now.
Once he hits the asphalt, the wheels grab a hold, turn the car around, and he was right up in front of traffic, and boom.
It could have been much worse with the fire.
And Harry, we laughed at you a while ago when you spun the car out. But you see, folks, what would have happened had he not spun the car out is you would have had an accident like that. So I'm not going to laugh at you anymore.
I think this happened on the day before our race, maybe. It's on Saturday.
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
That's how you knew it.
Right.
Yeah. You may be slow, but you learn after that, right? Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Is Daytona 500, 1986. Harry Gant is involved in this. Let's see what happens. The 12 spun.
The 12 blew a tire and went into the wall. I think the bumper or something was floating there when I come in and hit Joe Ruttman in the 26 car. My car wouldn't turn. We were trying to, everybody get stopped. But when the tire blows out at any place, you can watch it.
I think Neil broke a wheel to start this crash. And I'm not sure exactly what caused Ruttman, although maybe it was debris from Neil's crash.
See, something flies out right there.
There's the bumper.
And I hit something and the car would not turn then. You couldn't.
You see, the problem is that there's so many small pieces on the racetrack.
You can see them flying around right
Yeah,
now.
you see big pieces flying around. Well, there's several big pieces. Well, folks, there's hundreds of small pieces that's flying around, and all it takes is one little old sliver, and you run it with a right front tire, and you lose, or left front, right rear, and you lose control. I went through a wreck in Daytona, I don't know, 1982. They had a big crash down in turn 1. I wound my way through it, and I said, man, I done made it through this wreck. I got down to turn 1, and I'm supposed to turn and go around the racetrack. Nothing happened. I had cut down a right front tire. I went straight ahead into the outside retaining wall. Just a little sliver of metal, something that would never show up on a television camera. And there's hundreds of them out there.
Like in the crash earlier with Richard at Daytona, a lot of those cars had cut tires that even all through that wreck, some of them wrecked, some of them didn't, but a lot of them had blown out tires.
And they all would come back in and get 4 new tires.
As a matter of fact, the big pieces normally in the wreck that Richard had, I ran over something that knocked the shock off my car, bent a shock, had to change it. It bent the exhaust system almost together. It bent a wheel. I ran over something that hurt my car badly, but it was big enough that it didn't puncture the tire.
Yeah.
So I was better off hitting a big chunk that time than I would have been a little old small piece that would have cut the tire down. Like Brett Bodine, cut a tire down. He had no control. Bam! He runs into Richard.
Right.
Poor Richard, he's just sitting there, and here comes Brett.
I think that's where the fans a lot of time do not understand that it looks like someone's made an obvious mistake and lost a car, but where in fact they've cut down a tire, had a tire going down or some problem, you lose control, and it's not that you were stupid and did something crazy. It's a mechanical failure more often than not.
In crashes, the problem is that we've seen crashes today, and it's so hard to determine if it's a mechanical problem or the driver just flat made a mistake. And unfortunately, we've done both.
Right.
We've had mechanical problems, and we've made a couple of mistakes.
And the mechanical problems, they didn't believe us, and when we had the driver problems, then they believed us.
Just think when you get in front of a television camera and blame the other guy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's like wrestlers do that, and the boxing people now are, I'm going to punch you. Now we got a lot of TV cameras around. I say, I've been okay, and Harry come along and run into me, right?
Yeah. And Harry didn't get a chance to talk back to defend himself.
No rebuttal. No rebuttal.
Yeah. Okay, the next one. This was a major incident that drew a lot of attention to these 3 fellas. This happened at the Winston, 1987. Phil, why don't you call this one?
Well, this is the restart of the last segment. It's a 10-lap segment for $600,000. You've got Earnhardt, Elliott, and Bodine all trying to get in the same hole, and it didn't work. Bodine got together with Bodine. Elliott got together with Bodine, turned him around, and amazingly enough, everybody emerged through this crash without much major damage.
Play it back and watch the Rusty Wallace car go. He chose to take the outside during the spin.
Right now, he's on the inside.
He's on the inside now. And once he committed to that, the hole was open for him, but there would have been no other choice if Jeff's car had come up higher.
Earnhardt just take off there and get about a 20-car length lead.
Here comes the Rusty.
He's the white car just
Oh, man.
Barely made it.
could have fit 2 pieces of paper in between them.
Good driving.
Now, that's a great question. Is that good driving, like for the 5 car, Jeff Bodine? Was he just pure lucky that he locked it up and it goes around, or did he drive that thing in without, Harry,
Well,
you
he
know?
was more lucky that nobody didn't hit him while he was spinning around. That people like Rusty and everybody chose to go the right direction and enable him to spin around, keep going the way he was going. You know, he had a lot of good drivers in this group right here, and everybody chose to make the right move. So everything worked good there. Jeff done good, and all the other guys done good missing him.
That's the key point. I think Harry just hit on it. Let's just watch that again. Let's just see if we can see that film one more time. Because I'm telling you, everybody there did a super job. We talk about Bodine, Elliott, Earnhardt. Look at them. Every one of those cars has a chance to, the front car wrecks. He spins around. He's going to start. Now he starts. He goes up the racetrack. Earnhardt turns under. He goes by. Here comes 21, Kyle Petty, Tim Richmond. They go by on the inside. The 11 car on the inside. The other car on the apron of the racetrack, on the flat bar of the racetrack.
At speed.
At speed. The 20, Rusty Wallace goes above. He has, like you said, cigarette paper between the wall and the other car. He gets the car through there. If there had been lesser drivers in that group of cars, it would have been a major, major crash. As it was, some feelings were hurt, some tempers flared, but there was no sheet metal bent.
Everybody got to finish.
Is that experience doing it for 20 years? Is it instincts, eye-hand coordination? What do you think it is to make that happen? You talk about good drivers, average drivers, better. What makes that happen?
You've heard the blind hog finds an acorn every once in a while?
Yeah.
That's basically what happened.
Yeah.
I think experience teaches you, first of all, we talked a bit ago about not jumping off the throttle. You know, if you jump off the throttle, the car's going to want to spin. So the first thing you do is ease out of the throttle. And the second thing you want to do is don't spin the car. Don't jerk the wheel right or left. Don't spin the car.
Yeah.
Keep the car going as straight as you possibly can, because as long as you're going straight, we
You
got
more
control, right?
Right, you got a lot more control. You got to keep the car straight.
Now, if we get it going backwards, we don't have a clue.
No control whatsoever. And then you're a victim of circumstances. Anybody can hit you. You can bounce into anybody. But that's the key. And, you know, they always talked, at least when I was growing up, they always talked about at Daytona, Talladega especially, always aim for them, because when you get there, they're not going to be there. Well, I've never aimed at anybody in my life. I've always tried to avoid them from the word go. If there's ever trouble ahead of me, I always try to avoid them. I've never aimed for anybody and said, well, they'll be gone by the time I get there. You know, but obviously we've hit a few in our day, but you really have to concentrate and try all the time to miss them. I mean, but like Benny said, you can't lose control of the car, first of all. You can look at all these accidents we've looked at today, and 90% of the people involved in the wrecks are victims of circumstances.
Yeah.
I mean, like Richard Petty in the big crash at the top of the show at Daytona, I mean, he got together with a car, and so from that point on, anybody that got involved was a victim of circumstances. Brett Bodine ran through the debris, blew a tire, and hit Richard. He's a victim of circumstances. Alan Kowicki got all the way through the crash, blew a tire, hit the wall. He's a victim of circumstances. Right. So there's really, and in a lot of crashes we've looked at, there really hasn't been anyone to blame. You know, there's been 2 or 3 cars, and you really can't say this guy did it wrong, you can't say that guy did it wrong. So most of them you're a victim of circumstances, and it just so happens that sometimes more people are involved in more crashes than other people aren't.
Whenever you have a car to spin in front of you, blow an engine spinning, he's in a slide, you know, you're behind and you're figuring where to go. Well, the chances are much easier then until the first point that somebody else hits that car. When you got 2 cars, and then it's really tough to make a decision which way to go.
Do you ever have a situation where tempers flare, someone's hit on you, leaned on you, that you're hitting him back on purpose? Phil, do you ever have a situation where you deliberately just want to hit someone real hard to pay them back, let them know where they've hit you? Does that situation happen on the racetrack?
Well, it's a little bit, and it's not that you really want to hit them hard, but you do, if somebody, and usually a driver can tell whether it's a flagrant shot or whether it's just an accident. You know, someone's trying to pass you and they slide up and get into you. I mean, that's racing. But if you feel like that maybe it's getting late in the race and you're running for position and this car leans on you a little bit and you feel like it's intentional, then you want to make sure you let him know that you don't appreciate it and you're not going to tolerate it. So you'll give them a shot back, or it may so happen that they'll get you and get you out of shape and be gone, and the race is over. So then you just don't say anything about it. In the next race, you make sure when you get the opportunity to give them a shot back, and just so that they know you don't tolerate it, and that you're not going to put up with it.
I think everybody right at that time when something happens, if they could get right back at that instant, they would drive right back and crash the other car or try to lay back on him. But if you can run 5 or 8, 10 laps, then you start thinking about it a little bit, then you think about going on and finishing the race.
A lot of times you've run all day, you've run hard, 500 miles, and come down to the last lap and something happens and it's total depression. You think you're in the top 5 and you end up 20th or something. Here's a perfect example, Talladega, Alabama, where everybody's flying. Bobby Allison gets together. Phil, why don't you call this one for us?
Well, Sterling Marlin and the one car and Bobby got together, and that caused a chain reaction and caught 6, 7 cars. But you have to realize that it's the last lap, and each car you pass is for position. So, everyone's going to be on edge. As a matter of fact, I was 1 lap down in this race due to ignition problem, and I was right behind that group of cars we just watched. And as I got going through the trial wheel there, that's me, right, the last car in line. I stopped because I said, man, these guys are going to crash, sure enough. And they did. So, I looked like a hero because, if you'll watch the footage go on, these guys will crash, they'll all spin down off the track, and then I'll come easing by because I stopped way beforehand because I wasn't racing anybody for position. But all these guys are. That's Benny down there. He goes on to finish 5th in this race. And see, I was the last car in line, and see, here they are cleaning off the banks, and I still haven't shown up. And I was 4 car lengths behind them when we changed the footage. So
that's one we talked earlier. That's one of those instincts that something's going to happen, and I'm back anyway, so there's no use tearing my race car up, and I'm going to finish where I'm going to finish.
Well, you feel like it, yeah. If I'd have been racing a couple of those cars who had also been a lap down, maybe I'd have been up in there gouging. But I knew there's not one thing I could do to improve my position, so I said, well, you might as well back off, and if something happens, then you're in a position to avoid it.
In this situation, I went on the bottom of the racetrack. I'll be in the 55 car in a few moments coming by on the inside. There goes Neil Bonnet. There I am. That's in the black and white car on the bottom of the racetrack. And why I went to the inside, who knows? But I was close enough that I felt like the cars would stay up on the outside retaining wall until I could get by. If I had been back some, if I'd been on the straightaway and looked up and saw the accident in the corner, then I would have went high, feeling like when I got there that all the cars had washed down off the bank and I was able to go by. And normally that's what happens. That 10% of the time, you're in a crash.
And if it does a great job and he's able to hold it against the wall, then you're in trouble, right?
They're in a lot of trouble. So you just do exactly what you feel like you have to do at the time. And with 18, 20 years experience, you're probably right more than you're wrong. With 5 years experience, it's probably 50-50. With 2 years experience, you're probably wrong more than you're right. Wouldn't you say here?
That's right.
Now here is a perfect example of there are drivers that have the reputation of being intimidators, that they intimidate the other drivers on the racetrack by their style and by their history. Now in a last lap situation like this, is there an intimidation situation here, or everybody's going for it?
Everyone's going for it.
Everyone's going
for it. Absolutely.
When does the intimidation factor work? When is there a point that you're halfway through the race and one of these fellas come up on you?
Early on. Don't you think, Eric?
Yeah, I think so too. You try to get spots, try to move up as close as you can get to the front. And if you're racing with somebody, I think it happens more early in the race because everybody wants to get up in a draft and get going and hold that position, to where during the day you have pit stops, you're still going to remain in front of the pack.
And another thing is that everyone tells the rookies, they tell us all, but the rookies probably listen more than the veterans. The race is 500 miles or 500 laps. So what's the big deal if he gives us position away early on in the race?
Yeah.
As long as he can run some laps or run some miles and get some experience, he might as well be intimidated. Yeah. So that's the easiest time to do it, is early in the race.
Fellas, we're getting close to the end. Phil, is there anything for the fans that we haven't covered in this, a viewing tip, something that they can watch on TV that you think may be something that you could help them with that they don't understand?
Well, I think first of all, just in talking what we've talked about today, knowing that there's a lot more to it than it appears. But I think just one thing that I think you can see a lot about, or tell a lot about a race, is if you get a tight shot of a car, watch the driver's hands. And you can tell a lot about that. And if he's like Cale, especially with an IndyCar camera, Cale Yarborough will be sawing bees and everything. So you really can't tell by him because he does it anyway if everything's right. But you can really tell a lot by the driver's hands. If he looks like he's really having to chase it, then he's having trouble. And that usually will correspond to what's happening on the racetrack. But if he looks like he's just out for a Sunday drive, then normally he's running pretty good. And just maybe concentrate on the driver's hands and see if they can tell anything from that.
Harry, do you have any tips for our viewers?
I think the pit crew, when the car pits, right behind them, 2 or 3 cars together, if the camera's on them at that particular time, watch the pit crew race the other pit crew. That's a race in itself, and it makes a lot of, and you see somebody running 5th and try to watch them pit with somebody running 2nd and see if they make a pass before they come back on the track. I think that's pretty interesting.
I think that's an excellent one. We've not given the coverage to the pit crews that we would normally, but that's one of the biggest parts of the sports, and this is a team sport. And without those guys to get you in and out and all those things, then you're wasting your time, because more races are probably won in the pits than they are out on the racetrack. Beanie, any tips for our viewers?
You know, the toughest thing for a viewer to appreciate automobile racing is watching a car going around the racetrack by himself. The camera is isolated on one car. Bear through that, folks, until you get a shot with 3 or 4 cars there. And then you can appreciate just how difficult it is. These cars side by side, bumper to bumper. And again, it looks like the cars watching on TV, it really looks like they're not traveling that fast. That they are, in fact, just old cars, street cars, going around the racetrack. That's not true. They're finely tuned race cars, traveling at an extremely high rate of speed. And the people that are doing that are driving the car, and the people that maintain those cars, the mechanics we talked about, are specialists. And when I'm not racing, I'm a tremendous race fan. I love to watch a good automobile race. And I think if you start watching the cars side by side, bumper to bumper, and realize that they're running from 100 to 200 miles per hour, you can appreciate more what we do.
Well, I'd like to thank Phil Parsons, Harry Gant, Beanie Parsons, 3 of the top people in motorsports. I hope you've enjoyed watching the tape. And I hope you understand that we take accidents very seriously, and we certainly hope that we can prevent them from happening. But I know that they're going to happen, and it's a part of racing, it's part of the sport. I hope you enjoyed the tape, and we'll certainly look forward to seeing you at the races. Thank you.
A lot of people look at racing as being a very dangerous sport. I've had a great career in racing. I've had my ups, I've had my downs, I've been hurt, I've healed up. Through some of the accidents that I've had is what's made racing safe as it is today. I see you people at the races.